Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of She Spark Magazine. And Kim Boudreaux Smith, have very much biased opinions on the guests that I interview. So I'm going to have a huge biased opinions today. I am interviewing this amazing woman. I do not know her. This is my first time, but I feel like talking before we came onto this interview, I feel like I've known her forever, and I'm even going to get the opportunity of meeting her face to face as she's going to be journeying, which we'll talk about in this interview here to Michigan. But literally 5-10 minutes that Lisa Kohn and I have been speaking, I feel like I've known her forever. So I'm really owning my guest today on this interview. So how to overcome a challenging childhood and emerge even stronger. Lisa is going to share with us today her childhood experience, how to not hang on, because we all have childhood experiences, how to move forward and really excel and thrive and shine like the beautiful, miraculous human beings that we all are. And she wrote about this amazing experience, which I'm getting goosebumps talking about this, is To the Moon and Back, in her new book. So Lisa, as I, of course, am owning you as my guest today, welcome to this interview. I so appreciate you and your time today.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here and to meet you and to speak with you.
Yeah, thanks. So I want to jump right on in, Lisa. All right, To the Moon and Back. First of all, To the Moon and Back is about your childhood and how you lived between, and I'm going to call it, and at any time, Lisa, jump in, and you can go ahead and add words to what I'm saying, but this parallel life that you lived as a child, oh my God. So let's just begin there, this parallel life that you lived.
Yeah, so it's funny the sentence I've come up with to describe my childhood is the best seats I ever had at Madison Square Garden were at my mother's mass wedding. And if you're old enough to remember the Moonies, then you do know that we were a huge cult and Reverend Moon performed mass weddings, and my mom got married with about 2,700 other people, or couples, I think, in Madison Square Garden. And on the other hand, the best cocaine I ever had was from my father's friend, the judge. So I had a fanatical, puritanical, unbelievably rigid cult that I believed in and I belonged to and I loved, and yet I lived with my dad in New York City's East Village in the 1970s, and his life was sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and I had my brother smoking pot at the age of 10, and so it was these two contrasting experiences that gave me what I am, I guess.
Okay, well, first of all, let's just clarify, Lisa. Back in the 70s, it was all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
It was all about sex, drugs. Both my parents were hippies. They were very young when they had my brother and then had me, and way too young to have kids. They had him at 19 and me at 20, and they were both hippies until my mom found the church, and then they kind of diverged in their different paths of looking for alternative realities. So, yes.
Yeah. So your mom's world, your mother's world was it was a fanatical cult, the Moonies. And like you said, if anyone remembers back into the 70s, they remember the cult, the Moonies and that whole environment. And then your father's world, obviously your mom and dad split, divorced.
Yep.
And there was shared custody at one point in time between you and your brother, with you and your brother, going back and forth with between typical divorced family's parents. And your father's world was the sex, drugs in New York City in the East Village as well. And you state that, he had the druggies coming in and out of his home, and you watched that. The dope dealers, you watched that.
Yeah. Some of his friends were drug smugglers, and it was just kind of where we lived during the week. And I don't even know how to, it's funny, I don't even know how to explain it other than, that's exactly what it was. I read the autobiography of the lead singer of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and he lived this crazy life with his dad, and his dad had him smoking pot, I think, at the age of 8, and it was just a crazy, insane life. And I called my brother and I said, you have to read this. This is the best description of that half of our life that I've ever read. So it really was quite crazy and weird on both sides. Although what I always say is my childhood is weird and the examples are outlandish, if you will. Oh, I'm sorry. The examples are outlandish, but the themes, how it affected me, I've found over the years are really universal. A lot of people have the same thought patterns I have that came out of that. They just don't have these really kind of crazy, funny stories that caused it in them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I bet. So when did you, first of all, how old were you when your parents decided to take the dividing road, when your mom discovered the Moonies and your dad's like, no, I'm not involved?
My parents split up when I was about 2, and we lived with my mom. And then we had moved in with my grandmother and grandfather because her parents, because my grandmother was quite ill and my grandmother passed, and we stayed with my grandfather. And then when I was about 10, my mom found the Unification Church, and soon thereafter left us with my grandfather and moved into the church full time. And soon thereafter that, my grandfather had a few problems and kind of ended up in the psychiatric ward of the hospital, and my father found out what was going on and came and got us. So around 10, I joined the church, and then we kind of moved in with my dad. And then I lived that dual life of weekends with my mom and in the church, and weekdays with my dad in New York City. It's kind of crazy and convoluted, but that's kind of an overall view of the timeline.
So Lisa, did you complete a full education? Did you get all the way through high school and then further education?
Oh yeah, I went to Stuyvesant High School in New York City. It was actually my local high school, but it was one of the specialized schools in New York City. I went to Cornell University, and oddly enough, got a psychology degree, a bachelor's in psychology. I have a good friend here who said to me, if you read my book, so like, you grew up in a cult, both your parents were kind of really not great parents. When I left the cult, I became anorexic. I got mildly addicted to cocaine. I was in a lot of destructive relationships, and I was a psychology major, and I never saw the connection. And then I actually have a master's, an MBA, a master's in business from Columbia University, which I got in the early 90s.
So very impressive. You have a very impressive background. Yeah, I mean, your education stream is extremely impressive. And literally, I'm sitting here scratching my head. It's amazing, how we can live parallel lives like that and pull off. I mean, those are impressive universities that you were, tap dancing in, so to speak, and became educated and acquired your degrees. It's amazing. First of all, how much of this, maybe not to this extent, because this is not the 70s anymore, where, of course, we're in it's 2018. So much of this still goes on in such a different way, now that we've got the internet and, Google and things like that. It blows me away of a lot of this dysfunction happening behind people's closed doors. However, going to the Yales and the Cornells and driving home these beautiful careers and education, it blows me away. I scratch my head literally and it blows me away how we can do that.
Yeah, so my mom sometimes says that it was like I had a steel rod as a backbone, but I am amazed. Well, two things. I am amazed at how often I skirted absolute disaster, but I never completely crashed and burned. I've got pretty close a number of times, but managed to, the grace of whatever, guardian angels or however you look at it, pull myself out. There's just, yes. I forgot the second part, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
I do wonder how I made it through, but I do believe that we all can. I learned a lot from the process, and we all can kind of figure out how to move on.
Yeah, exactly. So at any point in time when you were younger, did you ever felt unsafe in either environment?
I definitely, as a young child, when we lived with my mom before the church, definitely felt unsafe. She had less than savory boyfriends and friends, and it was not a wonderful environment. I definitely felt unsafe with my dad. At times and in that environment, and once I joined in the church, I was very aware of how satanic it was and he was, which is probably not a great way to look at your parent, but that's how I viewed it. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I felt unsafe in the church per se. I felt unworthy. I felt not enough. I felt guilty. I felt shame. I felt a lot of things, but I didn't feel sad when my mom left because we were told it was a good thing, and I it was wrong of me to feel sad. So I never felt angry because it was wrong to feel angry. I never didn't know how to touch any of those emotions for a very long time. But I don't know that I felt unsafe per se. And in some ways, and this is the weird thing, right? When my mom joined the church and brought us with us, in some ways it was a haven from what we'd already gone through and what life was like with my dad, because whereas I would never say it's a good thing and many weird things happened, and cults are cults and they're big now and they are awful in many ways, because we were these young kids, my brother and I were adored by many people in the church. So it was sort of a cushion of love, even though we lost my mom and all that, but it was a cushion of love.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So, okay, let's speed up to today. Are either one of your parents alive today?
They are both alive.
Oh, and how is your relationship with both of them?
It's interesting. So I'll start with my dad. My dad, unfortunately, they're both young, so he's 75 years old. He had a stroke 11 years ago. He lost his right eye and the left side of his body, and he's currently in a nursing home. He was in an assisted living facility, and he kept smoking cigarettes in his room and causing fires, so they moved him into a nursing home. I am his primary caregiver. So my relationship with my dad it's guarded, and that I kind of have a buffer around him because I do adore him, and he can, the nice word for it, be mean at times. But I do take care of him, and I do my best to make his miserable life a little bit less miserable. He at times knows about the book, but because of the stroke, forgets about it. Recently I told him it is going to be published, and he said, "That's great, congratulations," but I think he's forgotten about it again, which is good, because I think if he read it, he would be devastated, because he does think the worst thing he ever did was leave us with my mom. Mm-hmm. The funny thing is that my parents have both apologized to me for leaving me with the other one. So it's just interesting.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. It is.
Yeah. And my mom is also alive. She lives in New Jersey, actually in the building she lived in when she was born, which is funny. I'm still in Milburn, New Jersey. And over years, we've had a closer relationship and a less close relationship. I would say again that it is guarded at this point. I mean, I have her in my life. Both my parents are better grandparents than they were parents. I have 2 children. But my mom can say and do things that really don't feel great to me. And so I kind of keep her in my life, but keep her at a distance, and, wonder if one day we'll navigate it even better, or if where we are now is as good as it's going to get. But I do have a relationship with both of them.
It's interesting, Lisa. A lot of us, and I'm going to use us because, and again, I'm barring and holding no judgment here, but a lot of us, sometimes it takes second and third time around to be better at something. Hence, like being grandparents and things like that. And your mom and dad, and no excuse, your mom and dad were very, very young. And back in the 70s, it was love, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. There are some times I miss the 70s, I miss those 70s. I would not want to be doing it now, but I miss those 70s. But and a lot of us, and I wasn't a parent back then, and my parents weren't doing that, but a lot of us were hanging out and doing things like that.
Yeah.
And your parents were very young, so it's just part of the environment. So your parents are nearby. They're both still alive, and they're obviously better grandparents. What was your mom? Has your mom read the book?
Yeah, and so I do want to say that I do know, and I have learned that my parents did the best they could.
Yes.
I do understand many places where my dad's limitations came from and his outlook, and as I say to my brother, all the crazy things my father did, I do think he actually did because he thought it was good for us. He thought it was good for my brother to experience drugs at a young age. So I don't think it is good, but I don't think my father was intentionally harmful. And my mom did the best she could as well, for whatever reason. But yes, she's read the book. She's read it many times. Actually, she is a very strong supporter, even though she comes out looking really not good in it. She is a really strong supporter of the book and of me writing this and of me telling the story. So she's been absolutely wonderful about that.
That's awesome. That's great. And that's wonderful that you are getting that type of support from her at this point. Okay. So Why the title? How did you know? Because listen, I'm a published author as well, and I've not written a solo book. I've done projects, and I'll tell you what, that title, that's one of the inks, is the title, coming up with the right title, and then the graphic for the book, because that's the bookshelf, that's the reception of the bookshelf, so to speak.
Yeah.
So how did you come to this title?
So it was titled many things along the way. There was a while it was titled My Life is a Series of Interrupted Yoga Sessions, which is still a great title, and I'm going to use it someday. It was titled Raising Myself, and there was one other title that it had. But when I connected with the publisher and we agreed to go ahead, we were just playing with it, and literally one of my dear friends on the block where I live, I was running with her, and she said, how about To the Moon and Back? And I said, text that to me, because we were in the middle of the run. I'm never going to remember that. And it just resonated. Oh yeah, it was titled Way Out for a while. But this one just resonated because I do feel like I went in and I found my way back. And then the second part of the title, A Childhood Under the Influence, my husband actually wrote that. And I just love that because there were so many influences that I was completely under the influence, right? When you believe in something like when one is in a cult and one believes that absolutely, that certainty, it is an incredible influence on the brain, and it actually affects how the brain develops. So that's where the title came from. And the graphic of the book is actually very funny. That's a picture I took of the building I grew up in. So if you go on my website, and actually the back of the book, there's a picture of Block Drugs, of a drugstore that's on 2nd Avenue and 6th Street, where I grew up in the East Village. And we had that on my website for a number of years, and then we realized whoever built my website hadn't gotten permission to use that photo. So I literally went up to New York City, and I took my camera, and I went to go take my own picture of Block Drugs so that I didn't unrightly use someone else's photo. And I walked past my building. It's on 2nd Avenue between 3rd and 4th Streets, the Manhattan, and I took a picture. And I thought nothing of it. I just thought, I need a picture. And I have this wonderful branding firm that's working with me, Worthy Marketing Group. And Jamie, the leader of that firm, she said, let me take a stab at your cover, because we were really trying to find it and we couldn't find it. And she, unbeknownst to me, found the picture and built the cover. And I'm like, oh my God, that's beautiful. I love it. And now the people who know me growing up are like, oh my God, that's your building. So it's quite funny how it all came together.
The colors are outstanding on the cover of the book. They're really beautiful. And that's another part of the branding, as well as, the colors. And, this is a whole other interview. In fact, I may have to pull you back in another interview with maybe a couple of other phenomenal solo authors, because so many people, and rightfully so, Lisa, so many people have a story to tell, and it needs to be written. We need to do book tours. We need to be vulnerable enough to stand up on a stage and also speak it and tell our story as well, because our stories are all very moving. They can really inspire and empower and really change other people's lives, maybe known or unbeknownst to us. But part of all that branding around a book, and I hear so many people say, I want to write a book, and I'm like, thumbs up, rock on, go for it. There's so much involved in writing a book. There is and here's the thing, because I've written them, and I've written them for a multitude of reasons. It's not just writing the book. It's once that baby is born, is birthed, pushed through the birth canal, and it is now a book and sitting on the shelves. That's where the work really begins. It's like, your mom, I'm not a mom, your mom. It's, now that the children are born, that's where the work begins. It's the same as the book, all the marketing and everything, which, by the way, please share with everybody, number one, where they can get to the moon and back, A Childhood Under the Influence.
So it will be out on September 18th, which is a very auspicious day for us former Moonies. But it'll be out on September 18th, but you can pre-order it now on IndieBound. And I say that first because I like to work through independent bookstores. You can order it on Amazon, and you can order it on Barnes & Noble. It's available everywhere. And any one of those, you search To the Moon and Back, and my name, Lisa Kohn, and it's Kohn, a weird way to spell it. But it's there for the ordering, and it will be shipped on September 18th, 3 weeks from today, which is exciting.
Yes, and so what's the date? What's September 18th? What's that date?
So in 1974, Reverend Moon spoke at Madison Square Garden. This is when we first joined. We joined in 74. And plastered around New York City were all these posters that said September 18th could be your rebirth day. And then he also spoke on September 18th in 1976 at Washington Monument. So any former member is like, oh, that's really funny. I'm like, yeah, I know. They said pick a Tuesday in September, and how could I not pick the 18th? So it's 2 days after my birthday, and it's an auspicious day. So it's great.
Well, it'll be a great birthday gift. Are you still involved with the church?
Oh, well, no. I am, so in my process of healing, it's funny because in the book I write many, many years ago, I ended up in when I really hit my hugest bottom and, you know, my life completely blew up. I ended up in a couple of forms of therapy, and I was with this group of therapists, and she said to me, you have to integrate the church in order to heal. And I believe I cursed. I said, no blank way. Like, no. The only way I survived leaving was by totally shutting it out. But it was like these 8 to 10 years that were just a black hole because I left everything I knew and loved. And that is what's so hard. They call them second gens, people who were born in or raised in cults, is that it's so hard to leave because you're leaving everything, not just a way of thinking and a belief, but your family and your friends and all that. So, but in the process, somewhere when I was already writing the book and in its many gyrations, I started going back. I started going back to church places. I started reaching out to people I knew, had known then. I just started touching it to kind of say it was real, it did happen. And so I have found just about everybody that I really cared about, reconnected. I was best friends with Reverend Moon's children. I reconnected with them. I reconnected with other kids I grew up with who we were torn apart when we were kids in some weird ways. And since I've gotten this publicity, members have reached out to me, former members have reached out to me or found my mom and then found me. So it's been really, really cool. So only in that way would I say I'm involved, in that I do talk to some people and I reconnected with people, whereas there are other people who leave and will have nothing to do with people. I'm also involved in a group of second generations from the church. There's a Facebook group and a whole group that kind of supports each other. And so I've gotten very involved in there because I'm like the older mentor. I left over 30 years ago. I'm like, people come on, I'm like, oh my God, I knew your parents. How's your dad? It's very funny. But so in that way, and if you read the book culminates with me going back to a church service where my best friend is the pastor and is preaching. And it's just a very wild experience to go back and to see that and to understand it and to know that I don't need to go back. I'm not going back. So it's that's my involvement. My only involvement is that I've reconnected with people, which is great.
Well, but that's excuse me, I'm going to use the normal word here for a minute, Lisa. That's kind of normal because, there's your childhood. Yeah. And when you're saying, okay, I disconnected, I closed all that down, I moved away, I blocked all that out, it was all blacked out. That's like cutting off the right arm and the left leg, so to speak, of our bodies. With the beauty of Facebook, and trust me, is that I have a love-hate relationship with that damn Facebook. But here's the love part of the Facebook is I'm in a private group from everybody from my high school.
Yeah.
And talk about so cool reconnecting. So that is so normal to want to reconnect with some of those people. That was your childhood, and that was their childhood too.
Yeah. No, it has been amazing, and it has truly held me and healed me. And because from my experience, right, just my experience, by denying it and repressing it, I acted out, right? I tried to punish myself and hurt myself and suffer in so many ways. I literally, I got engaged many, many years ago, and I got engaged to someone who drank a hell of a lot and was not very nice to me when he did. And I'll out myself, I stumbled into Al-Anon saying, tell me if he's an alcoholic. I would never be with an alcoholic. Only to be like, oh my God, there's so many reasons why I would. Like, I did not even know. I knew my childhood was weird and I can make you laugh. I did not know that it had damaged me. Yes. And that I had scars and like I have body memories. I started to get help, even more help, but sometimes because things started just showing up in my body in really weird ways, right? All that trauma is stored in us. And so how do we heal it? How do we allow it? How do we accept it? For me, I've had to learn to love it, right? Even those parts of me that the irrational fears and the really weird reactions I have and all those things that I learned as self-protective measures, I still have them at times, and I have to allow them and accept them and thank them for trying to save me and tell them that I'm no longer not safe, right? I'm very safe now. I have a very safe life, but it's all there. And it definitely affected me even when I said, I'm fine. I got nothing. I got nothing. I got no stories. I got nothing to tell you. So yeah.
It's interesting. That's a healthy self conversation that with the healing process. And I call that inner critic, that
Yeah.
other voice, in which we all have that. And it's not because we have dual personalities or we're psychotic. We have an inner critic. I call her a hag in the attic. And that hag in the attic, I'm telling you, she's the biggest bitch there is on the face of this earth. And I'm known for this around the world, this hag in the attic. And, when we can finally start sitting down, and we don't want to get rid of that inner critic. We don't. That inner critic there is to warn us, hey, you said you were taking a right-hand turn earlier today and now you've gone left. I'm just popping up to say, what's going on, sister? What is up? And to be able to be strong enough and do all this healing and self-worth and self-love, because we all have baggage. And our baggage, let me tell you, I don't even like to compare. At the age of 58, I won't even compare childhood baggage, because we all have it. No parents are perfect. No parents are perfect. But to be able to have that healthy conversation with oneself to say, I am safe, I'm good. This is where we start to arrive to that self-healing and not controlling that hag, but managing her and giving her the respect, because she's just looking out for us. That's all. That's her job. That's her job.
That is truly what I've learned. I call it embracing the dark side, right? My title was the editor, and I could literally say something and I'd be like, and the editor just said this, because it was so constant once I became aware of it. But I've realized that I learned all these things to stay safe as we all do, right? But to stay safe in what either was unsafe or felt unsafe to me. And so this part of me thinks it's protecting me. And so how can I get mad at it for protecting me? I got to sit it on my lap and there and, give it a hug and say, thank you, but it's okay. Calm down. What do you need? And that, I do deep breathing a heck of a lot to just kind of be like, thank you. And it's actually okay now. And okay, let's keep going. Right. Because my inner critic, my editor, doesn't push me harder, because I can be extremely, extremely driven. And that's one of my things I've actually learned to have to tone down how hard I push and hard I work, but can criticize absolutely everything and just lambast me, thinking it's protecting me. So it's been a learning to realize how to love that part of me versus to push it away.
Yeah, and I think it's the bottom line right there, Lisa, is we need to all learn how to love that part of us. Because my hag, let me tell you, I got to give her a cigar and a margarita with top-notch organic limes and the best salt there is that goes on the rim to make her sit on down, because she's stubborn. I'm the same way. I'm very driven too, and I have learned, in the second half of my life, to be able to breathe. So in fact, I want to swing back around. 3 points, because you have now, we have grown up, even though there are some days I want to be a Toys R Us kid. We have grown up, you've gotten married, you have kids, all this and that. What 3 simple things, and I heard a couple of you talking about just here a moment ago. What 3 things, to the women that are listening to this interview, that they could do starting in this moment, listening to this interview, to go, for them to, if they're hearing and they go, oh gosh, holy crap, man, oh man, what a childhood Lisa had. Wow, I'm not the only one, to heal and move forward. Because as a society, we like to hang on to that baggage. We're just human beings, love to hang on to that baggage.
Yeah. So the umbrella, the biggest thing for me, right? And this is not to make light of any situation that anybody's going through, or because my childhood was weird, but there are people who have a lot worse trauma and a lot worse baggage than I do. But self-love, truly finding a way to love and care for myself, whatever that means, for oneself, whatever that means. I was taught, or I learned really well not to. I didn't even know it was there, but to figure out what makes me happy, what makes me safe, how can I be more gentle to myself. I teach lots of people just to put their hands on their heart. It feels really good and it's calming, right? So anything in this day, at any moment, what can I do to care for myself? I've learned that I have a choice, that our minds are so amazing and so powerful, but we have the opportunity to use them in a way that's going to help us. And so how can I actively right now pick up my brain and put it on something that's going to ease my heart and soul, right? How can I have that? How can I literally think about something? My friends all know, they now look for yellow birds. I love those yellow birds. Every time I see the yellow bird, I'm like, yes, the universe is beautiful. What is it? Is it the flowers? Is it the trees? Is it the grass? Is it the breeze? Is it a cup of coffee? What can I savor and enjoy and be in this moment and lift my heart and mind and put it on something else? I do have the choice, not what happens to me, but how I work with and deal with what happens to me. Yeah, that's my main two, right? Like, look for joy, look for love. I use the words I choose love a lot. How can I come from love, and how can I ease my soul? And then the third one as it comes up. That being said, it took me a long time to realize that it's okay to be angry and it's okay to demand what I really want, because I was a people pleaser for so many reasons and in so many ways that even when I think I'm being evolved and trying to be better in a relationship, I was trying to work out something with my mom and be better. And someone's like, is that your perfectionism? Are you trying to control it? Like, how to really realize what is true for me, what I need, what's negotiable and what's not. And with compassion, set those boundaries so that I treat myself and stick around others who treat me in a way that feels good most of the time, if not all the time.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a combination of three.
Yeah, you said that B word, boundaries. I mean, that's a huge thing, because if we don't have self boundaries with self love and self compassion, Lisa, set in place, how can we possibly get out there? We do get out there and interact. And it's one of the things that you also have said, is it gets messy. And you know what? I love allowing messiness, but I love allowing messiness within myself. I don't mind showing up to a meeting and I'm running late and the dogs puked before I left the house, and my allergies are going and I'm a wreck. I allow that messiness. I also allow the messiness of, look, just yesterday I tripped, I made a mistake, I'm human. I made a mess. And it's that messiness. And then you said one other B word, and this is I teach this a lot. And this, everybody hear this loud. This is free. Breathe.
Yeah.
Oh
all the time.
Gosh, and I mean deep guttural breaths. Breathe multiple times. It is so calming. And it's really cool if you're in rush hour traffic, and you've got that idiot up in front of you or the idiot behind you. Breathe. And it works. It's amazing. It is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, breathe and look around and ground myself in the moment and find something that just feels better to think about. And that's lift myself up. Absolutely.
Yep. Lisa, where can the listeners/readers track you down, follow you, and get in contact with you?
So my website for writing is Lisa Kohn Writes. So you need to know how to spell my name. It's LISAKOHN Writes, WRITES, all one word, .com. And I'd love to hear from anybody. I wrote this book in order to share hope and share. I always think if my story can give people hope, then it's worth it all the way around. But if you Google me, if you Google Lisa Kohn, LISAKOHN, I come up on the first 2 pages. I'm pretty much all over them. I also have a leadership consulting and executive coaching business. We blog a lot with that as well. So that's Chatsworth Consulting. And so between that and my writing, I'm very findable. Whenever people tell me they've been looking for me, I'm like, you haven't been looking hard. Because if you Google Lisa Kohn, you cannot. If you just spell my name right, you find me. So that's where I am.
And then you've got some wonderful book tours coming up.
Yeah, I have at this point 11 stops planned. I haven't yet booked New York City, but I will, and also in the environs there. But I will be in Wayne, Pennsylvania, where I live. I will be in Woodstock, New York, Westfield, New Jersey, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Port Washington, New York, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Shaker Heights, Ohio, Washington, D.C., Charlotte, North Carolina, Amherst, Massachusetts, and Westboro, Massachusetts. And then it'll be Thanksgiving.
And that's plenty. That's a lot, being on the road like that, plus managing a business and plus with families and, you know, and the life and stuff like that is a lot. So I'm excited. You're coming to Ann Arbor, Michigan. I live in a suburb of Detroit. That will be 45 minutes away from me. And I will be heading down with my book in hand to have you sign it, to shake your hand, to meet you, give you some big hugs and things. So I'm excited about that. But everyone else listening, if you heard the cities, you've heard the tours, if it's even an hour away, hour and a half away, get in the car, plan it, drive, go meet Lisa, get the book, go meet her. That's one of my most favorite things, by the way, is getting people's books, actually meeting them and getting them to sign it. I don't know, there's something so amazing in it's like a bucket check off list. I got to meet the author.
Yeah, it is wonderful, yes.
Yeah, it really is. It's really neat. It's that connection, that face-to-face connection. Lisa, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I want to thank you for, you know, I'm going to use the word, it's used a little bit too much and a little too loosely, but your authenticity and your transparency, not just here today in the interview, but oh my gosh, in your book. It takes, we have to pioneer, we have to lead. Otherwise, we're sitting way in the back, hoping, wishing, dreaming, and we're missing opportunities to change other people's lives.
It is very naked. I have, like I said, I've had a leadership consulting business for 20 years, and I have clients who've read the first chapter and said, I had no idea. Yeah. And I say, what made you think I would have told you this? But it is very naked, but we all have secrets. And I learned years ago, we are only as sick as our secrets. And when we share them, we heal. But by sharing mine, I've had clients I've known for years, strangers who've reached out to me online and say, me too. Not that me too, but like, I have that too. I thought I was the only one. When you can connect with people about it and then they don't feel alone and you know, oh, you have that too. You understand, you know what I mean when I say that. It's just part of the healing. So that is why I did it. I figured if I can bear it all, then there'll be a couple people who think they were alone in this and realize they're not, and maybe that'll help. So
absolutely. And that's the power of our message, of our words. And that is the power of the connection. And it is the hashtag #MeToo. Brene Brown is huge around that, one of my faves, Brene Brown. Yeah. And you're right up there with her. You're paving that way. You're leading that way. So
wow,
again,
thank
Lisa,
you.
Thank you so much. I recommend everybody listening to this, hunt her down, track Lisa down, go over to her website, get her book, follow her on social media, reach out, do whatever it takes to meet this amazing woman. And if she's coming to a nearby city, get in the car, go, you pack the car up with some girlfriends, go, make it a girl's day or go alone, whatever you so choose, but get on out there and meet her. And again, Lisa, I thank you very, very much for your time today.
Thank you. Again, it's lisakohnwrites.com and all the events are on there and there will be more. And I do love so far I'm responding to every email. I want to respond to every email. I love to talk to people. I love to connect and hear stories. So thank you so much, Kim, for the opportunity to talk to you.
My pleasure. Take care.
Take care.